Are you still shaking in your boots every time you negotiate a deal with the seller? Do this. Let's talk about thick skin, all right? And what you need to do to have that thick skin whenever a negotiation comes in. Before I do that though, if you like the content that I'm putting out there, I'm gonna ask you for a favor. I'm gonna ask you to drop a comment, let me know your thoughts on this, and also subscribe to the channel. And if you're interested in real estate wholesale coaching, go to wholesalinginc.com/WBB, the link's below, to find out more. All right, with that being said, that was the shameless plug. So with that being said, let's talk about thick skin, what you need to do to have that thick skin whenever the real conversations with a seller happen. All right, so the biggest problem that we often have when we're having a conversation with the seller, we're trying to present an offer, we're trying to make it illogical, and we're trying to, figure out how to come in, solve a problem, and then get a discounted property so we can push it for a profit, right? So we can sell our vested interest in that property. The biggest problem, it's really fear. It's fear of the unknown. I've talked about this before. And it's also a fear of rejection, okay? So people do not want to be rejected. That's just human nature. Nobody likes to be rejected. Nobody likes to come into something with the thought of being rejected, right? However, this is the nature of the beast. If you're in wholesaling, if you're doing real estate investments, you know that for a fact, you're gonna get about 95% to 97% of no's to find the 3% that are gonna say yes or maybe, right? So there's a lot of rejection. That's why we have so much attrition, and a lot of people just start doing wholesale, but they don't, stick with it for long enough for it to work out. So it's because they get rejected and rejected and rejected. It feels bad. Like, I don't like to be rejected. However, it's just the nature of the beast. You have to get used to it. So how does that happen? All right, you need thick skin to negotiate. Otherwise, the sellers are gonna eat you up and spit you back out. That's just how it happens. It's the nature of the beast. So I want you to do one thing. We have a great resource at our disposal. You just have to do it for long enough to give it time to work and build out that skin, all right? This is where a spin in cold calling comes in, all right? So I want you to switch your perspective in cold calling. If you're nervous about having conversations with people, more than likely, you're not gonna like cold calling. People usually don't like calling up strangers and asking them, hey, would you like to sell your house? I'll give you, 70 cents, 50 cents on the dollar for the property and see what happens. It's not conducive, right? However, it's a great tool. So yes, it's one of the best tools for lead generation. That's granted, right? One of the things that I always talk about with the Wholesaling Business Blueprint students is that you want to cold call. You want to go through the grinder of what it is. Cold calling. Why? Because it's going to help you deal with that rejection. The more reps that you put in, the more rejection that you get, the thicker skin that you're going to start to develop. Now, here's the thing. If you do it for long enough, you almost become numb to it. Anybody who's cold calls, been on telemarketing services, knows that. They understand that, right? And you understand that it's not a you thing. They don't even know you, so they're not mad at you. They're just mad at whatever situation, whatever they're going through at that moment. Traffic, if you call them while they're in the freeway or whatever. If they get pissed off, they're not pissed off at you. They don't even know you, right? So you start to understand that. From a theoretical standpoint, it's easy to understand that, right? But it's not so easy to process it in terms of emotions. People still feel bad after they get rejected, even though they know it's nothing personal. So here's the thing. The more you do it, the more numb you get to it. And then that's what I call the thick skin. Now, here is where it comes in handy, all right? This is why I push for cold calling. You actually coming in and doing the cold calling, if you don't have that experience yet, and while you're generating for leads. The biggest reason for that, because this is something that can be delegated. You can get a VA and plug somebody in and everything. And a lot of people who are starting their business say, well, you know what? I don't need a cold call. I don't want to cold call. I'm not built for cold calling. But what happens is that whenever the real conversation, the negotiation with the seller, talking about numbers comes in, you're not ready for that call. You have no idea. You're all nervous. You're shaking in your boots. Why? Because you don't have that thick skin. You're nervous about how to present it, how to have that conversation. You have no idea what they're going to ask. So this is where cold calling and actually having those conversations, big number of conversations with sellers comes in very handy. It builds your thick skin. They're gonna throw questions at you while you're cold calling, and it's like a boot camp for negotiation. All right. When you're cold calling, people are gonna say no. They're gonna say like the most god awful, things to you, and you're gonna get used to it. So when somebody pushes back in a negotiation, you're not scared anymore. Why? Because you're used to having those conversations already through the reps that you had cold calling. That's why cold calling is so important. So cold call to build your thick skin. You're not ready to negotiate if you've never cold called or if you've never had any prospecting calls before, right? So do not make the mistake of hiring a VA, paying for them to come in and generate leads, then paying for all the data that they're gonna need, and then you being $10,000 out of pocket just to wait for the right lead to come along. You're not gonna be ready for it. Why? Because you don't have the thick skin that's required to negotiate. You're gonna lose a deal, and if you manage to lock up that deal, you're gonna lock it up at a much lower price than you could potentially do it if you had that thick skin, right? Because the confidence to negotiate is just simply not gonna be there. You need to have conversations. Think of those conversations as repetitions, putting in the reps and taking those swings. That's it. That's really what it comes down to. So the biggest takeaway is make the practice runs. Take those swings through cold calling. Have those discovery conversations and lead pre-qualifying conversations. You don't have to do them forever. You don't have to do them for a year, 2 years. You can plug a VA into it, and they can help you mitigate some of that workload as you go through the process. But you still gotta have some experience with it. I always recommend doing at least 3 months of cold calling, just so you get into the habit of being able to manage those conversations adequately, all right, effectively per se. So practice through cold calling, and that practice is gonna help you through the big show, which is the negotiation, all right? So cold call. Change your perspective on cold calling. If you're afraid of it, if you're afraid of reaching out to people because you're gonna get rejected, that's what you want. This is an industry that requires you to have that thick skin in order to get to that negotiation, to that contract, to that number that you wanna get to as a real estate wholesaler. All right, stay focused, you got this.